Hello everybody, this is Roger Hansen with The Strange, the Bizarre, the Unusual, I Like It. And I've been doing a short little series on Shamash, or Shamash. There's different names for this Sumerian god, but this is the topic that I have been making videos about. I'm going to add a Sumerian king into the mix of the stories too, because I think that it's important to include him. I'm not going to make any judgments on it or anything of that nature. I just thought that it would be prudent to what I'm actually doing here. So with that, I'm going to provide an overview of the period of the Sumerian king Utu-Hagal, which was between ca 2020 through 2012 BC, and he succeeded in vanquishing the barbaric Gutian tribes. The Gutians had already gained control over the territories of the crumbled Akkadian Empire, which was ruled by King Sargon. It was during the reign of the Sargonian ruler Sharkolishari. Sharkolishari. The nature of the characteristics of the Gutians and their rule is briefly analyzed based on later Sumerian literature texts, so as the Curse of Akkad. This paper also presents a complete commended translation of the hymnic royal inscriptions of Utu-Hagal, describing military campaigns and the Gutian general Tarragon and Utu-Hagal's final victory, political events that might possibly have taken place after the Gutians were driven out of Sumer, and the ensuing power struggle between several independent or semi-independent states and kings for supremacy in Mesopotamia are given special attention. Authentic texts clearly indicate that the state of Lagash had a border conflict with the state of Ur, then probably already governed by its independent ruler Ur-Namah. Utu-Hagal, the king of Uruk, resolved this conflict by giving the annexed territories back to the state of Lagash. It is impossible to claim with certainty what kind of events took place after this conflict, since no interpretable and explanatory royal inscriptions have been found. However, it is evident that the king of Ur-Namah, managed to suppress or even kill all the other independent rulers of Sumer and establish the third dynasty of Ur, which dominated the entire Near East for the next 100 years. So this is basically, an overview of what took place and how Utu-Hagal was involved in a lot of things. I don't want to read the transcriptions that came from it because it's not written in English. It's written in probably translated Sumerian to English lettering for you, but it doesn't have anything that's actually written in English. So for anybody who's interested in it, this website, or it's actually a PDF. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's King Utu-Hagal, the liberator of Sumer and the restorer of divine justice. Since this isn't written in English, I do have some other translations and everything. I just wanted to read that introduction because it was pretty informative. So that's the one thing I could get from it. Now, Utu Hagal was a very profound king during that time period, and he was a big influence on Samaria. So, with that being said, I'm going to read another translation. It's called The Victory of Utu Hagal. And 1 through 12, Enlil, the king of all the lands, entrusted Utu Hagal, the mighty man, the king of Unug, the king of the four quarters, the king whose orders cannot be countermanded, with wiping out the name of Gutium and the fanged, snake of the mountains, who acted with violence against the gods, who carried off the kingship of Sumer to foreign lands, who filled Sumer with wickedness, who took away spouses from the married and took away children from parents, who made wickedness and violence normal in the land. 13 through 16. He went to his lady Inanna and prayed to her, my lady lioness in the battle, who butts the foreign land. Enlil has entrusted me with bringing back the kingship to Sumer. May you be my help. 17 through 23. The enemy troops established themselves everywhere. Tiragon, the king of Gideon, the mouths of the channels, ? Nobody came out of his city to face him. He already occupied both banks of the Tigris. In the south, in Sumer, he blocked the water from the fields. In the uplands, he closed off the roads. Because of him, the grass grew high on the highways of the land. But the king, endowed with power by Enlil, chosen by Inanna, with her, 1 ms adds, holy, hard. Utu Hagal, the mighty man, came out from Unug to face him and set up camp. ? Gutium to me and my lady Inanna will be my help. The Mused Amma Usamagal Anna has declared, it is a matter for me, and assigned Gilgamesh, the son of Nesumam, to me as the constable. Gilgamesh, that threw me off, I thought it was Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, could be Gilgamesh. The son of Nensuman, to me as a constable. The citizen of Unag and Kaluba rejoice and follow him with one accord. He lined up his elite troops. After departing from the temple of Iskar, on the fourth day he set up camp, ? In Nagsu, on the Surangal Canal. And on the fifth day he set up camp, ? At the shrine of Li Tape. He captured Nazu and Nebu Enlil, generals of Tarragon, sent as envoys to Sumer, and put them in handcuffs. After departing from the shrine of Li Tape, on the sixth day he set up camp, ? At Karkara. He went to Iskar and prayed to him, O Iskar, Enlil has provided me with weapons. May you be my help. In the middle of that night he departed, ? and above Adab. He went to the rising, Utu, and prayed to him. O Utu, Enlil has given me Gutium, has given Gutium to me. May you be my help. He laid a trap, there behind the Gutian. Utu Higal, the mighty man, defeated their generals. Then Tiragon, the king of Gutium, ran away alone on foot. He thought himself safe in Debram, where he fled to save his life. But since the people of Debram knew that Utu Higal was a king endowed with power by Enlil, they did not let Tiragon go, and an envoy of Utu Higal arrested Tiragon together with his wife and children in Debram. He put handcuffs and a blindfold on him before Utu Higal made him lie at his feet and placed his foot on his neck. He made Gutium, the fanged, snake of the monstrous of the mountains, drink again from the crevices. He boat. He brought back the night ship of Sumer. Now the last part where it says he, and then boat, those have missing parts apparently. With this reading, I noticed the part where he made him lay before his feet and he put his foot upon his neck. That is an old tradition that I wanted to point out. A lot of people believe that that's an old painting, which it is actually an old painting of Lucifer, and holding the foot on Lucifer's neck. But I wanted to read that to point out that that goes back much farther. And Utu Higal is where that actually started. So that is one thing that I wanted to point out there. And I've got another reading, or a couple of other readings that I wanted to point out too. I wanted to do some things concerning Utu Shamash, and I'm wanting to stick to the topic of Utu Shamash, but I still wanted to bring that into play because on a lot, you got to understand that the Sumerian folklore doesn't actually pertain to just Sumerians, which is Sumer. It evolved and it became later it became folklore for Babylonians, which is a later version of the Sumerians, but they're in the region and everything, but they aren't the same people. And it's just like when they were talking about Utu and conquering his enemies and stuff like that. That was after the Akkadians, and the Akkadians are completely separate from the Sumerians as well. So this is later on after the Sumerian civilization, and these are different deities too, because that's the reason why I'm wanting to talk about this, is because like you take a look at Ishtar. Okay, Ishtar is not a Sumerian goddess. Inanna is a Sumerian goddess, which everybody likes to believe that they're one and the same, but if you look at the time period where Inanna was first brought into existence compared to the Babylonians and the Hittite and the Assyrians versions of Ishtar, she evolved and became a completely different goddess altogether. So just keep that in mind. What you hear and what you read, they aren't necessarily the original Inanna what they are, or there were stories that evolved over time. So with that, I'll go ahead and start reading. Now with this one, it comes from Ancient History, the Ancient History Encyclopedia. I like to go to this one and read stuff too, so here we go. It's Utu Shamash, and the definition for it. It's written by Joshua J. Mark, published on the 31st of January 2017. Utu Shamash, known as Shamash and Babar, is the Sumerian god of the sun and divine justice. He is the son of the moon god, or the son of the Sumerian moon god Nana, and the fertility goddess Ningal in the Sumerian tradition, but was known as Shamash, S-A-M-A-S, to the Akkadians, who claim Anu or Enlil as his father. In the Sumerian tradition, he is the twin brother of Inanna. Now, understand right there, okay? He is the son of the moon god Nana and the fertility goddess Ningal in the Sumerian tradition, but was known as Shamash or Shamash to the Akkadians, who claimed Anu or Enlil as his father. So it was originally Nana. Okay. Nana and Ningal. Okay, in the Sumerian tradition, he is the twin brother of Inanna, goddess of war, love, and sexuality, the brother of Ereshkigal, queen of the dead, and Ishkar, also known as Adad, god of storms. He is one of the most important deities in the Mesopotamian pantheon, and is attested to in the earliest Sumerian writings, c. or circa 3500 BCE, though seemingly after the appearance of Nana. He is usually depicted as an old man with a long beard, whose shoulders emulate rays of light, but is also represented as the solar disk, or in the Neo-Assyrian period circa 912 through 612 BCE, as a disk with wings. The famous law code of Hammurabi, 1792 through 1750 BCE, addresses Shamash by name and claims it as Shamash who provided humanity with law. In Sumer, his cult centers were at Larsa in Eridu, and to the north in Akkad. He was famously venerated at Sippar. His temples were known as E-Babar, White House, or Shining House, which name attached itself to the god as Babar, the Illuminated One. Utu Shamash's wife was Sarita, in Akkadian, Aya, the goddess of the dawn, who, by the old Babylonian period, circa 2000 to 1600 BCE, was the patroness of the Naditu. These were cloistered women who had dedicated themselves to the divine, similar in some way to certain orders of Catholic nuns in the present day. The Naditu are routinely associated with Utu Shamash because their cloisters was attached to his temple, but they actually worshipped and served his wife, Sarita, or Aya, A-Y-A. The first literary hymns addressed to this god by the name Shamash, date from circa 2600 BCE, but he was referred to as Utu or Shamash regularly throughout Mesopotamian history from the advent of cuneiform writing circa 3500 BCE until its abandonment circa 100 BCE, where well over 3,000 years. His symbol of the solar disk shows a circle with 4 points protruding towards the cardinal directions and 4 wavy lines emulating diagonally outward between them, representing the power, light, warmth, and reach of the sun. He's the god of justice. As the sun sailing across the sky could obviously see everything that transpired on earth, Utu Shamash was not only the bringer of light, but the arbiter of justice. Orientalist Jeremy Black notes how Utu Shamash represents the brilliant light of the sun, which returns every day to illuminate the life of mankind, as well as giving beneficial warmth which causes plants to grow. 182. The light of the sun was thought to be able to penetrate and pierce every level of the earth, even the underworld, and illuminate the human heart. There was nothing, therefore, which Utu Shamash did not see. Scholar E. A. Wallace Budge notes. In primitive times, he was supposed to stride over the heavens on foot, but in later times to do so in a fiery chariot, which was drawn by animals driven by one Bunine, B-U-N-E-N-E. I'm spelling it because my reading isn't really all that great. He was regarded as a gracious God, for he helped all who were in trouble, gave life to the dead, and set free him that was in bonds. Possessing the power to see everywhere, he knew all things and judged men rightly. 85. Bunin, a minor deity, is often represented as his son and was worshipped by Sippar, Uruk, and Ashur as a god of justice. As the son of Nana, Utu Shamash was always listed in a secondary position to his father, but he was by no means considered of any less importance. His symbols and signs, as well as myths and hymns, are among the most numerous of Mesopotamian artifacts, inscriptions, and literature. Hamabari is very clever and careful. Hamabari, a very clever and careful king, understood well how invoking the name of Shamash for his law code would give it considerably more weight. This is not to say he did not believe in this god or his power, but he could have as easily chosen Marduk, who was, after all, patron god of his city of Babylon, or Enki, well known as the god of wisdom. Utu Shamash was the clear choice, however, because his presence was so obviously daily through the light of the sun. Now, what they're talking about right there is Marduk. Marduk is the reason why I discussed the king Utu, and I said what I said about him and how he influenced it, because Marduk is the same situation. Marduk is basically a Babylonian fake god. He was created because of a king who rose to power and proclaimed himself God. That's all Marduk was. Marduk eventually made the folklores and the belief systems change to where he took the place of Enlil, and he did what the older gods did instead of what the ancient Sumerian gods did. Instead of them getting credit, Marduk took the credit for it. I have my issues with Babylonian folklore because, first of all, by the time it made it to the Babylonian belief systems, the Sumerian beliefs were pretty much saturated, and they took what they wanted to and changed the rest. You can, like I said, you can see it with Inanna, and you can also see it with Enlil and Enki. They became lesser gods by the time they became a part of the Babylonian pantheon. So with that, I'll continue. Okay, God. He was God of the sun. Okay, Utu Shamash was the god of the sun. Every morning, Utu Shamash emerged from the door of heaven in the east. Two lesser gods swung wide these doors for him as came forth and stepped into his chariot to ride across the sky towards the west, where two other gods opened their gates for him to enter. He then rested in the underworld until he was awakened by his wife at dawn and went again to his chariot. The entrance to the Mesopotamian underworld was thought to lie in the west, quite close to the western gates of the sun god, and in some eras it was believed that Utu Shamash descended into the underworld at dusk to judge the dead. The judgment of the dead is an interesting variation on the standard view of the underworld, in which the souls of the departed were all equal. Death was the great equalizer who brought king and beggars to the same exact place. There was no demarcation of a heaven or hell, but only a dim realm where the souls ate at the dust and drank from muddy puddles. In the Sumerian belief, however, the dead were judged, and that judgment affected their future in the afterlife, even if by very little. Orientalist Samuel Noah Kramer writes, "The deceased were not treated all alike. There was a judgment of the dead by the sun god Utu, and to a certain extent by the moon god Nana. And if the judgment was favorable, the dead man's soul would presumably live in happiness and contentment and have all it desired. However, the indications are that the Sumerians had but little trust in hopes of a blissful life in the netherworld, even for the good and deserving. By the large, the Sumerians were convinced that life in the netherworld was but a dismissal, wretched reflection of life on earth." 135. Still, since the sun could illuminate even the darkest places, it seemed there was hope that Utu Shamash would reach into the netherworld and touch the souls of the departed, like his father Nana. Utu Shamash then served as a kind of bridge between the living and those who had passed on to the other side. It was believed that the food and water and other offerings should continue to be brought to the dead because they continued to exist simply without bodies and still needed subsistence. However, Utu Shamash's judgment of them went. Utu Shamash's judgment of them went, It was clear that the souls still existed to be judged, and so the living continued to honor them with offerings. If the dead were worthy of notice by the sun god, mortals could take the time to honor and remember them as well. Utu Shamash is almost always depicted as a kind benefactor, freely giving the gifts of life, but like many of the most important Mesopotamian gods, he was a completely realized individual and was not above refusing a request which inconvenienced him. Utu Shamash in myth. Most of the myths featuring Utu Shamash emphasizes his kindness and generosity. In the myth of Etana, which predates the reign of Sargon of Akkad, 2334 to 2279 BCE, the hero petitions Shamash for aid in helping his wife conceive at the same time that an eagle and a serpent are feuding over ownership of a popular tree and are also asking for help. The god takes care of each request justly and carefully in the same way as in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He helps the hero conquer the demon of the cedar forest, Himbaba. He was not always so accommodating, however. In the story of Inanna and Halupapu tree, the goddess takes a young Halupapu tree, possibly a willow, and transplants it in her city of Uruk, thinking that when the tree reached maturity, she would use its wood to craft a throne and couch to recline on. As the years went by, a snake built a nest in its roots, and indigo bird nested in its branches in its center. The evil spirit of Lalitu set up house. When Inanna came to water her tree one evening and found these unwanted guests, she sat down and cried through the night. At dawn, her twin brother Utu Shamash rose in the east and began his journey across the sky. Inanna called out to him and told him of her trouble, but he could not stop his daily trek, and further he told her he felt no need to. Inanna then sought the aid of Gilgamesh, who killed the snake, drove the bird away, and sent the Lalitu demon running. Afterwards, he cut down the tree and presented it to Inanna for her throne and couch. This was no selfish request on her part, because from the tree she created the sacred drum and drumsticks for Gilgamesh, which he was supposed to use for good, but then misused for war. They were taken from him and drawn down to the underworld. This story then set the stage for the myth in which Enkidu, or I remember hearing somebody say it another way, Enkidu, or Enkidu, I like saying Enkidu, the commander in arms of Gilgamesh and his best friend, descends to the underworld to bring them back, and after his death, Utu Shamash parts the veil so that the two friends can talk one last time. This myth highlights a central aspect of the personality of Utu Shamash, his involvement in the most intimate aspects of one's life. Jeremy Black comments on this after listening after listing the gods' aspects regarding the sun injustice writing. A third aspect of Utu was his direct interest in the affairs of mankind. One of the early legendary kings of Uruk is described as a son of Utu in the composition called the Sumerian King List, and Utu acted as a special protector of some of the later heroic kings of the city, for instance Gilgamesh. In the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, Shamash helps the hero against the monstrous guardian of the cedar forest, Humbaba. In the Sumerian poem the Muse's Dream, Utu helps the Muse to escape from the Gala demons who have come to take him to the underworld. Throughout the Epic of Gilgamesh, Utu Shamash is noted for his kindness and diligence in watching over the hero, and for this reason came to be regarded as the patron god of travelers and vagabonds. He also became associated with the highest of the gods and even the benefactor of the gods, who provided them with a home. At one point in the Epic of Gilgamesh, when Gilgamesh and Enkidu are setting out for the cedar forest, which I personally believe is Lebanon, the cedar forests of Lebanon, Gilgamesh says to his comrade, "Where is the man who can clamber to heaven? Only the gods live forever with glorious Shamash. But as for us men, our days are numbered. Our occupations are a breath of wind." Sanders, 71. The hopes and dreams, the aspirations and struggles of humanity were considered little more than a vapor, but Utu Shamash was eternal, and he would continue on long after any individual life was only a memory. Although his name was forgotten as Christianity gained acceptance, the vision of a loving son of a god, the light of the world, was not. Yeah. So without getting into any controversy, I will make any more on the last comments there. I noticed with Utu Shamash, with a lot of the readings and the videos and everything that I have gone over concerning Utu and Shamash and even the Sumerian texts, that not too many people talk about Utu Shamash, and he was one of the most important gods in the pantheon. You'll hear everybody talking left and right about all of them, and you don't hear too much about it. I seen a young guy, he was trying to talk about Utu Shamash, and he was all trying to be all philosophical, dude. He's a young black guy, and he's trying to bring some kind of African, influence in on Utu Shamash, like he was representing the stars and the skies, and when you look at the stars and the skies, you look at yourself, and trying to say that was their way of thinking, and for me, I just read the text, you know what I mean? I read the text, and I don't try to read too much into it, because the Sumerians they were very intelligent, don't get me wrong, but a lot of their beliefs were simplistic. Okay, they didn't try to overshoot. They love the gods because they created beer. I mean, you got to take things a little bit more serious when you read this stuff, and there's too many people out there, trying to link the Sumerians and their technology and all this stuff to aliens from outer space. And if you really get into these writings, you will find out that these were some really horrible aliens. I mean, it's amazing that these people actually believed in these gods. The things that have been written about and the way they behaved, it's hard to believe that they were actually gods. So I kind of understand why, if Abraham did exist and he moved out of Sumer into Israel, or whatever that area was called, I could understand why he changed a lot of the stories around where these gods became one god and they were a little bit more compassionate, because what he was raised up on and what he believed, it was pretty crazy. So it makes sense why he did what he did. Well, you know, that's going to be the end of all my readings. I just wanted to share that because I put out some shorts on some videos that I made. If you guys like this video, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you want to make a comment, just make a comment below in the comment section. Do me a favor and forgive my reading. I'm still trying to get better at doing it. I'm just trying to be laid back a lot more than what I was before, and do my readings and talk about it more openly. I'm not going to try to be all tight about it like I was trying to earlier in my earlier ones. And hopefully I can make better videos. So with that, I am going to end my reading, and like I said, if you liked it, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Thanks for watching.